My life was shaped by hard work and determination, following a straightforward path. Growing up on a small Midwest farm taught me resilience and simplicity. Despite my rural roots, I wanted more than the familiar fields and faces of my tiny hometown. That ambition led me to law school and eventually to New York City, where I was told dreams could come true if you were brave enough to chase them. What I didn't expect was that New York would also be where I experienced my first heartbreak. The shift from farm boy to aspiring lawyer in the chaotic city wasn't easy. Adjusting to Manhattan's towering buildings, crowded subways, and relentless pace left me feeling out of place. But I landed a job at a mid-tier law firm working in bankruptcy, a field as foreign to me as the city itself. Amid the professional challenges and loneliness, I found solace in my colleagues and later in a woman named Eloise. Eloise broke my heart. I wish I'd handled it better, but deep down, I'm still that farm boy. My name is Walter Stillman, an up-and-coming tax attorney. It's not exactly thrilling, but the truth is even less exciting. Fresh out of law school and pursuing a master's in taxation, I got my first and only job at a mid-sized Manhattan law firm working in the least desirable department, bankruptcy. At the start, I had a modest job and a place to live, nothing more. But my luck changed when I began working for Eric Erickson, the firm's bankruptcy partner. He was a seasoned expert, a tough mentor who expected competence, but was always willing to teach. I owe much of my success to him. Through his guidance, I found my footing in life, and with time, I even found happiness. But first, I had to face heartbreak. Our bankruptcy department was small, mostly just Mr. Erickson and me. Bankruptcy wasn't a popular field at the firm, so when we needed help, 2 part-time lawyers reluctantly pitched in. The work felt surreal, like something out of a Lewis Carroll story. Everything seemed upside down. Of all my law school classmates, only Chuck Thompson ended up in New York too. Though we weren't close in school, our shared Midwestern background brought us together in the city. Chuck, now working for the Manhattan DA, had recently married and invited me to dinner at his apartment. When I arrived, I immediately noticed Eloise Schaffer, an incredibly attractive woman with that signature New York elegance. She had a sophisticated yet effortless look, as if her beauty was just natural. I had no idea why she ended up as my dinner partner that night. Eloise, with her dark hair and green eyes, seemed way out of my league. But apparently, Carol Thompson had other ideas. The evening turned into a delightful conversation. Eloise wasn't just beautiful, she was outgoing, confident, and engaging. At the end of the night, she asked me to take her home to Brooklyn. I thought we'd take a cab, but she insisted on the subway. She stayed close, asking me questions and genuinely listening, which made the ride exhilarating. At her door, she rewarded me with a fiery kiss that left no doubt about her interest. "Can I see you again?" I asked. After some effort, we found a time for our first official date. Afterward, she gave me a second more reserved kiss and said goodnight. I left, stunned by my luck. 5 weeks and 4 dates later, I was heartbroken. The night before, Eloise told me she had plans with another man, Rodrigo Ruiz, the state labor commissioner. Tall, handsome, and successful, he seemed like the perfect match for someone like Eloise. I must have looked miserable because Mr. Erickson called me into his office. "So, Walt, what's wiped that Midwestern smile off your face?" he asked. "Sorry, it's personal. I don't want to burden anyone." But there was no point in hiding anything from Eric. Soon enough, he had the full story. He leaned back in his chair, folded his hands like he was praying, and rested his chin on his fingertips. "When I was young," Mr. Erickson began, "this city was still run by the Irish and Jews. It was fascinating to watch them, 3rd and 4th generation Americans who still spoke with accents or used Yiddish expressions. These were people who went to Fordham and Columbia but still managed to keep their ethnic flair as professionals. They're gone now, and I miss the fun they brought to politics. These days, politicians come from diverse backgrounds, which brings new perspectives to the political landscape. Or maybe they just take themselves too seriously." "Sorry, Mr. Erickson, I don't follow," I said, confused. He sighed and replied, "My wish is that you never lose that Midwestern innocence, Walter. Now about your girlfriend's guy. He was born Rodney Kaufman. His father was the heir to Kaufman's department store fortune, and his mother was Puerto Rican Jewish, Luis Ruiz. He's married to Sophie Sloan from the wealthy Sloan family. For political reasons, he uses his mother's last name and goes by the Spanish version of his first name. Roddy is a seasoned politician with a solid career built on his expertise. But your lady prefers you to him for 3 good reasons. First, the man is 47 and she's much younger. Second, he's married to a nice Jewish woman with 3 kids. While she's not overly jealous, she certainly wouldn't tolerate being replaced, especially given her wealthy and influential family. Third, Roddy himself is cautious about his personal relationships because of the potential impact on his political career. But what if she is seeing him? I asked, feeling uneasy. Mr. Erickson frowned the way he did when someone asked a dumb question. How old is this lady? 29, I replied. A 29-year-old woman with a ticking biological clock? And you're a suitable 26-year-old lawyer, he said, his tone sharp. I think you're misjudging the situation. Roddy Boy's involvement is meant to push you forward. 4 dates with a 29-year-old single woman means things are getting serious. So, either get serious or get lost. After that talk with my boss, I felt better, even encouraged. On our next date, I pushed the issue and was rewarded with a warm response. If we're going to move forward, I need to know you're serious about this, she said, her voice firm. I could ask the same of you, I replied. Are you speaking generally? She asked, narrowing her eyes. Yes, I confirmed. And about Roddy, she pressed. I've been seeing him for a few years, she admitted, but he's not serious. And I am serious, I said, thinking again how smart Erickson was. She took me to bed that night. I wasn't made, but I didn't have much experience. She had plenty and used all of it. I barely survived the night. I ended up moving into her apartment for a week, and soon enough marriage was on the table. She began dropping hints as soon as I moved in. Eloise was 29 and working as an associate manager at Sanderson Financial Management. Shortly after our engagement, she became a vice president. I knew she was smart and careful, but I was surprised by how organized she was. It took just 6 weeks to plan the wedding. Family-wise, she was the oldest of 3 and the only daughter. Her father, a real estate lawyer, worked in Westchester and Putnam counties and was heavily involved in politics. That's why they rushed to plan a large wedding. Death had reduced my family to just me and my sister Nancy, who lived on the West Coast with her partner. She refused my invitation to the wedding. My career had settled into a comfortable routine, now doing less demanding work without Eric's guidance. He made it clear he was preparing me for the future. Bankruptcy was stagnant, and Eric didn't hide the fact that I needed to be ready for when things picked up as he was planning to retire. You have everything. Intelligence, a likable personality. But you need to learn how to really work, he said, looking at me intently. In response, I focused on studying the laws and cases carefully. Yes, he acknowledged, but there are still some techniques that aren't written down yet. On the Friday before the wedding, I learned a new trick. Eloise and her mother had picked Labor Day for the wedding. I hadn't quite understood that this early date meant we'd have the weekend to get ready, and we could fly to the Caribbean for our honeymoon, courtesy of her parents, the Tuesday after the wedding. Our bags were packed and waiting in the hallway, 3 for Eloise and 1 for me. I was nervous about the wedding, but I didn't have time to dwell on it that morning. The week before, my fiancée had gone to her family's home in Westchester, so we could have some time apart before the big day. This will make the honeymoon sweeter and keep my wedding jitters from scaring you off, she joked. At 10 a.m. on that Friday, the last business day of August and 3 days before the wedding, I had a bankruptcy court hearing. It was for setting up the first day orders, a critical step in reorganization cases to establish the rules for how the debtor would proceed under court protection. For a small case like mine, these hearings were informal, with just a couple of lawyers and the judge. Usually, it was the bank's lawyer and the debtor's lawyer. Judge Marks, like me, stuck to the rules. That Friday, I walked into my office ready to grab the case file and head to court, but the clerk told me the judge's secretary had scheduled a phone hearing instead. When I arrived, I was immediately nervous. The judge's clerk connected everyone, and Judge Marks asked, "So, Amanda, what's your issue with this ruling?" Amanda was the bank's lawyer. She was sharp and knew the law well. Her arguments were direct and hit all the weak spots in my case. Amanda was a talented lawyer, but not particularly attractive. Her nickname was Sugar, though it made no sense. She was short, under 5 feet, and heavy-set, especially below the waist, though I always thought she had a nice face. After Amanda finished, I tried to speak, but the judge cut me off. "The order is issued. My secretary will fax it to all parties," he said. Once the call ended, I asked Amanda what had just happened. She laughed and said, "Judge Marks got tickets from my firm for the last days of the Saratoga races. He needs to be north of Albany by 1 p.m. He couldn't waste time talking to us today. So, for appearances, he ruled against me in a case that doesn't matter. But next time I'll get you," she said, still laughing. "It's not how I like to win," I complained. "Take what you can get," she replied, then added, "You know, my aunt say you're a pretty good guy for a goy." She laughed again and ended the call. Around this time, Eric came in and told me to take the rest of the day off and relax before the wedding. As I left, I couldn't help but ask, "Who are the goyim?" He smiled. "That's us, non-Jews. And what they meant was that you're a good young man for a guy like you. It's a compliment." I headed back to the apartment, thinking I could leave for Westchester early. I wasn't supposed to arrive until the next day, with the rehearsal dinner set for Saturday evening. But why sit around in the city? I expected to be tied up all day, working on the case, writing and rewriting the order to satisfy everyone involved. But that didn't happen. So, why not get a head start? I tried calling Eloise first, but her phone went to voicemail. That's when I made the fateful decision. I called her parents' house in Westchester, hoping to leave a message. It was one of those moments where a random occurrence changes everything. None of the Schaffer family was home. Their regular maid, Rosita, was off getting fitted for her dress for the wedding. Her cousin was filling in, a woman with limited English whom I had never met. She didn't recognize my name. "I'd like to leave a message for Miss Eloise." "This is Walter," I repeated for the 3rd time. "She's not here. She's in the city," the cousin replied. "I know she lives in the city, but she came home for the wedding." "This is Walter. I'll come by later today. She's in the city, staying at a hotel. Come to the wedding tomorrow," said Rosita's cousin. It took a moment, but my curiosity was sparked. "Which hotel?" I asked. "Plaza," came the reply. I'm not usually a suspicious person, but who wouldn't hesitate after that conversation? It was nearly noon when I finally called the Plaza Hotel. Our reception was supposed to be in Westchester, not at the famous Plaza in New York City. Something was happening that I hadn't been told about. There had been a bachelorette party last week, but maybe the ladies had decided to have another celebration before the wedding. I called the hotel and asked for Eloise Schaffer. There was no record of her under that name. Then, perhaps out of insecurity, I asked, "What about Rodrigo Ruiz?" "No, sorry," replied the young woman. "Try Rodney Kaufman." After a pause, she said, "Yes, Mr. and Mrs. Rodney Kaufman are staying in the honeymoon suite. Would you like to be connected?" It could still be someone else, I told myself, thinking it wasn't an uncommon name as the phone rang. When a man answered, I almost hung up. But I had to ask, "Can I speak with Eloise Schaffer, please?" "Elle, it's for you," I heard him say. "Hello?" she said. I recognized her voice, but couldn't bring myself to speak. "Hello? Is anyone there?" she asked, and then to him, "There's no one on the line." Finally, I found my voice. "It's Walter. Don't come to the wedding. I won't be there." I hung up as I heard her scream my name before the call cut off. I don't remember much after that. I sat in the apartment paralyzed, as if all the energy had drained from my body. It felt like everything good in my life was gone. The romance, living together, our stylish apartment. It had all been a lie. The apartment wasn't even mine. The lease was in her name. My mind shut down. I knew I needed to get up, grab my suitcase and leave, but I couldn't move. Then the apartment door opened. It was her. I vaguely wondered how she'd arrived so quickly. I looked at my watch. 2 p.m., the judge should have been at the races by now. Funny how that fact stood out to me. "Walter, we need to talk," she said, her voice uneasy. "Have you been with him all week?" I asked, cutting straight to the point. She stood in the living room, avoiding eye contact. "We just said goodbye," she replied quietly. "So it didn't end before now," I pressed. "Walter, stop it. You know I love you," she insisted, frustration creeping into her tone. "How do I know that?" I challenged. "I'll never see him again. We've broken up," she said, her voice firm. Why? I demanded. She hesitated. I've been with him for 7 years, almost since the day I moved to the city. No, why in it now? I asked again, the question hanging in the air. Because I'm marrying you on Monday, she said softly. No, you're not, I replied coldly. Walter, be reasonable. Everything's arranged. Over 300 guests are coming, she pleaded. I didn't respond. There was no point. I stood up, walked past her, my mind made up. Where are you going? We need to work this out, she cried, her voice breaking. I grabbed my suitcase and left. She followed me, shouting for me to stop, but eventually she gave up. I wandered aimlessly for hours, vaguely aware I was heading toward the bridge. As night fell, I was exhausted. I crossed Court Street near City Hall and found a small bar. It was packed for a Friday night, but I found a dark corner to hide in. Hey, a voice said. I looked up to see Sugar Moskowitz with a drink in each hand. She set one in front of me. You look like you could use this, she said. Thanks, I mumbled, taking a sip of the strong drink. It's called a stinger, she explained, then added, as you can see, I'm not very religious. Religious? I asked, confused. She smiled a beautiful smile and explained it was a joke about being in a bar on a Friday night with non-Jews. And what's with the suitcase? What should I tell my mother? She teased. I looked down and suddenly remembered the suitcase by my side. Oh, well, I had to leave. After all, the apartment is hers, I said, taking another sip that burned all the way down. Sugar, Amanda, didn't ask too many questions. Instead, she told funny stories about herself and people we both knew from bankruptcy court. It's a small legal niche, and everyone knows each other. She kept my glass full and tried to make me laugh. I think she already knew I was engaged and getting married soon, but she didn't seem surprised to find me in a Brooklyn bar with a suitcase the night before my wedding. Maybe she'd had a few drinks before I arrived and hadn't realized what the suitcase meant or where I was at that moment. The only clear memory I have of the night was Amanda helping me into a car and saying, it's not far to go. Later, I dreamt of Eloise. In the dream, she pinned me to the bed, enjoying herself much more than usual. I urgently needed to use the bathroom, but when I got out of bed, I realized I had no idea where I was. The apartment had changed. For a moment, I was completely disoriented. Then it hit me with sharp, painful clarity. I'd left Eloise in her apartment. But where was I now? My head throbbed, and my brain felt stuffed with cotton. I could hardly remember the night before. I remembered going into the bar on Court Street. Then a friend had joined me. For a moment, I couldn't recall who it was. And then it came back. Amanda? Sugar? What had she been doing there? And why was I here, unclothed in an unfamiliar bed? I was in a small room, just large enough for a double bed. There was no other furniture. The bed was up against a window that stretched from the middle of the wall to the ceiling. I was alone, but there were signs someone else had slept there too. There wasn't even a closet, and my clothes were nowhere in sight. It felt like the room was an oversized closet that just happened to have a bed in it. But there was a door, even though it couldn't open fully because the bed blocked it. I looked out and saw a larger room. One side had a window, and I could see the sidewalk outside. I was in what's known around here as an English basement, a floor partly below ground, with windows starting just below sidewalk level. The space had been converted into a small apartment, or, as I later learned, 2 apartments, the one I was in and a smaller one at the back. The main room was divided by a counter into a kitchen and dining area. The bay window section functioned as a living room, with 2 small chairs and a window seat. Seeing no one around, I crawled out in search of the bathroom and my clothes. There was a door at the far side of the room, and just as I got there, it opened. Amanda stepped out, wearing a robe and drying her wet hair with a towel. "Oh, you're up," she said, noticing me just in time. It must be nearly noon. I instinctively covered my groin with my hands, which made her giggle. "It's too late for modesty," she teased. I saw everything last night. Embarrassed, I rushed past her, guessing that the room she'd come from was the bathroom. I was right, and after closing the door behind me, I relieved myself. The bathroom was small, just a shower stall and no bathtub, so I decided to take a quick shower before figuring out what had happened to my clothes and suitcase. The shower was cramped, but the hot water felt great on my hungover body. Feeling refreshed, I looked around for a towel, but couldn't find one. Still wet and unclothed, I had no choice but to confront Amanda. I opened the bathroom door and stepped out, only to realize we weren't alone. A young, dark-haired woman was sitting at the table, grinning widely at me. Amanda was in the small kitchen area, busy with cups and a coffee pot. "How do you take your coffee?" Amanda asked, completely casual, as if I wasn't standing there unclothed. I jumped back behind the bathroom door and called out, "Can I get some clothes, or at least a towel?" Both women burst into laughter. Amanda paused long enough to say, "The towels are in the closet, along with your suitcase and the clothes you tore off last night." Peeking out from behind the door, I asked, "Where's the closet?" Still laughing, Amanda pointed the coffee pot at a set of barred doors near the back of the room, behind the desk and in front of what must have been the apartment's main door. "I'd bring them to you, but, as you can see, I'm busy," Amanda said. The other woman didn't move either, so I had no choice but to run to the closet. When I opened the doors, I found my clothes neatly hung inside. My suit and shirt were hanging up, and my underwear was resting on top of my suitcase. I quickly grabbed my underwear and pulled it on, followed by my shirt, all the while hearing the women giggling behind me. "Walter, by the way, I'm sorry. This is my sister, Sonia," Amanda said. "Hello, Mr. Stillman," Sonia greeted me. "Hi," I replied as I opened my suitcase to grab my jeans. "You don't need to get dressed on my account," Sonia said. "I may be the younger sister, but I'm already married with 3 kids. Unclothed men don't shock me." Both women laughed as I pulled on my jeans. "Come have some coffee," Amanda invited. Sonia brought Bailey's. In a minute, I said, still dressing. "You didn't mention he was so shy," Sonia whispered loudly to Amanda. "I didn't know," Amanda replied, also in a loud whisper. "We barely know each other." "You're a free woman, Amanda," Sonia giggled. Once I was dressed, I sat down at the small table, craving coffee. "I like mine black, no sugar," I said. Sonia giggled again and whispered to her sister, "I think he got his sugar last night." They both burst out laughing. My head was pounding, but Amanda handed me a cup of strong coffee. Just as I was about to take a sip, Sonia's phone rang. She pulled it from a large leather bag on the floor. "Oh, hi," Sonia said into the phone. She paused, then whispered, "Aunt Hester," of course I remembered. "I'm with Amanda, but she has company and I haven't mentioned it yet." There was a longer pause, and Sonia grinned. "No, it's a man," she said, looking over at Amanda, who was gesturing for her to stop. Sonia continued, "Yes, he's handsome, but a bit shy. No, he's not Jewish, I'm sure. Trust me, I got a good look when he came out of the shower." Sonia was laughing so hard she could barely speak. "She wants to talk to you," Sonia said, handing the phone to Amanda. "Hello, Anne," Amanda said into the phone. "No, I won't forget Daddy's birthday. Tomorrow at 6, then dinner at 7, got it?" "Oh, he's just a friend." There was a pause while Hester apparently spoke. "It won't work. He's just a friend from work. I'm sure he'll feel out of place at a family event." Amanda handed the phone back to Sonia, who listened as her aunt continued. "I don't know," Sonia said, turning to me. "She wants to know your name. What should I tell her?" "Walter," I answered. "Walter Stillman." "Walter, and I'm pretty sure they slept together last night," Sonia added. "Amanda," Amanda yelled, but Sonia calmly replied, "Aunt Sophie's on the line now, and they want to meet him." "No, oh sweetheart, no," Amanda screamed in protest. Then Sonia handed the phone to me, saying, "My Aunt Sophie wants to speak with you." I took the phone and put it to my ear. "Hello, Walter. I'm Amanda's Aunt Sophie, and my sister Hester and I are hosting a party for our brother Leonard's birthday. Amanda and Sonia's father. We'd love for you to join us with Amanda. Could you do that? It would mean a lot to the family." "I'm not sure. I don't want to intrude," I said, trying to politely decline. "I'll leave it up to Amanda." I handed the phone back to Amanda, who spent the next 10 minutes arguing with her aunts while Sonia grinned mischievously. Both aunts took turns debating with their niece until Amanda finally gave in. "Fine, I'll bring him." Amanda sighed before hanging up. "Sugar, sugar, sugar," she muttered. "She does that, you know," Sonia said. "Does what?" I asked, confused. "Replaces curse words with sugar, as if we don't know what she really means." Sonia smiled, standing up. "Well, my work here is done. Time to go rescue my husband before the kids drive him nuts." Once Sonia left, Amanda turned to me. You don't have to go. My family can be a bit much sometimes. I don't get why your aunts want to meet a stranger at a family gathering, I said, confused. Amanda let out a short, almost sad laugh. Sonia's my younger sister by nearly 4 years. She's already married with 3 kids. I turned 30 last year, and my whole family thinks I should be married and pregnant by now. They act like my biological clock is ticking on their schedule, but they don't really know me. And apparently I'm also the wrong religion. She gave a wry smile and added, but at least I'm the right gender, Amanda continued. I used to have a roommate here to help with the rent. $500 a month. You know, junior bankruptcy lawyers don't make much. I nodded, fully aware of the low salaries in our field. Then something clicked. There's only one bed, I said, thinking aloud. Was your roommate a woman? Yes, Amanda replied, catching on to my question. But don't jump to conclusions. I'm not completely straight, but for me to have sex with a woman, I need to be a little drunk. Jessie, my former roommate, felt differently. She wanted a relationship I couldn't give her. So here I am, mostly straight, a Jewish spinster. I processed what she said as I munched on a Bailey, a flat roll with a dented center, often topped with onion flakes like a bagel, but not quite. Finally, I asked the question that had been bothering me since last night. Did we? Amanda burst into laughter. Yes, we slept together, although I wasn't thrilled when you called me Eloise. Sorry, I mumbled, feeling my face flush. Don't be a prude. We were both a little drunk, she said, grinning. Was I asked, embarrassed. You were very drunk, she confirmed with a smirk. I sat silently, sipping my coffee, trying to make sense of how my life had taken such a strange turn. Just yesterday morning, I had been pursuing a case against the woman now sitting across from me, Amanda, affectionately known as Sugar. Yesterday, I had been looking forward to marrying Eloise. Now, I had lost Eloise and was discussing last night's events with Amanda. This is too much, I muttered. What is? All of it, I said. Eloise. And the fact that I'm here with you? Amanda didn't laugh, though it seemed like she wanted to. Look, you've had a rough time with Eloise. How about staying here and taking it easy today? I thought for a moment. I don't think I can handle being alone right now. If you don't mind, I'll stay. She smiled. Sure, we'll make the most of my hetero. And so we did. Went back to bed. Sex with Amanda was different from what I'd had with Eloise. Amanda was so enthusiastic it surprised me. Wow, you really enjoy this, I said. It's been a long time since I've been with a guy, she muttered. But not with women? I asked, curious. She propped herself up on her elbows, looked at me, and replied, I've slept with a lot more women than men, if that's what you're asking. But it's not about the sex. I lay next to her, slightly further down the bed. In one swift move, she was on top of me. She looked me in the eyes and said, in my opinion, nothing compares to a man in bed. But in a relationship, I need more than just sex. I need someone I can connect with. More importantly, I need someone I can respect. Do I fit that description? You're a very respectful partner in bed. It's clear your fiancé worked hard on improving your skills. I didn't know how to respond to that, but I couldn't deny the truth. Eloise had certainly trained me well in that area. Amanda continued, You're here in my bed because you're a good person. I've been watching you. You never hurt anyone if you can help it. You're honest and treat women like people, not objects. You're one of the good guys, and there aren't many left. I replied, That's nice to hear, but does this really apply to a novice lawyer? It sounds like you've been keeping an eye on me. Keeping an eye on you? Of course. I saw you on Court Street and followed you to the bar, didn't I? If Miss Eloise Schaffer lost track of her prize, I wasn't about to miss out. I'm not a prize, I said firmly. Are you saying she was in love with you? She asked. No, probably not, I said, feeling the weight of the situation hit me. Sorry, she said softly. I didn't mean to offend you. With that, she slid down my body, and we were once again swept up in passion. Later, we ordered takeout for dinner, and after eating, we fell into a deep sleep. In the morning, Amanda's aunts called to remind her about the upcoming party, asking if she could come early to help with preparations. Mandy, don't forget to bring Walter. Sonia told us all about him, and everyone's eager to meet him, Aunt Hester said over the phone. I don't know what Sonia told you, but he's not my boyfriend, Amanda replied. Well, bring him anyway. He knows he's invited. If he comes, Amanda said before hanging up. I grinned. As far as I can tell, they're expecting me. You don't have to go, she said, looking at me seriously. What else would I do? I don't want to be alone right now, I admitted. Amanda had distracted me from the chaos in my personal life, and I wasn't eager to sit around thinking about what Eloise had done. Okay, she agreed, but be prepared. You'll be scrutinized and treated as a potential suitor. Well, technically, I am your groom, but let's keep my personal issues a secret if you don't mind, I said with a small smile. Fine by me. As far as today's concerned, that which Eloise doesn't exist. But soon you'll have to deal with her, Amanda warned. I know, I sighed. Amanda reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. Walter, you've got to make a decision. Either go through with this wedding or end it tomorrow. Either way, it's going to be messy. I can't go through with it now, I said, feeling overwhelmed. Don't be too hasty. If you call it off, there'll be serious consequences for your career and life. This won't blow over quietly. Why? I'm not going to explain the real reason, and I doubt she will, I argued, feeling a little defensive. Oh, my sweet, naive friend, she said, squeezing my hand gently. Do you really think people don't know about Commissioner Ruiz and Eloise Schaffer? They've been together for quite a while. I thought they broke up, I said, surprised. Amanda didn't laugh, but her knowing smile said everything. I played along, but Eloise dated Ruiz the entire time she was with you. You, but why? I asked. If she wanted to stay with him, why involve me? He's planning to run for governor next year, Amanda said. Your engagement to Eloise was supposed to end the affair, and you were the perfect solution. A young, decent, professional, straight guy. The kind of man every straight woman in New York is looking for. A straight woman? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Yeah, someone who identifies with the gender they were born with, like Eloise. She needed a partner to quiet the rumors about her affair with an older married politician. She played you like a fiddle, as you New Yorkers like to say. I frowned. Oh, don't feel sorry for yourself. Maybe she was just saying goodbye like she claimed a week before your wedding. Would you have preferred she did it after? I'd prefer if she didn't do it at all. In fact, I insist, I said firmly. Amanda gave a small shrug. Well, you got your revenge with me. You could still head to Westchester and marry her. That's not happening, I replied sharply. Hey, pull yourself together before you do anything drastic, she warned. If you don't show up at the church tomorrow, people will ask questions. Let them, I said, not caring about the consequences. Amanda leaned in, her tone serious. Okay, listen, a scandal won't help anyone. You're a junior lawyer in the bankruptcy department, and Commissioner Ruiz is a big deal. You make waves, and his boat might rock, but yours will sink. Are you saying I'll lose my job? I asked, suddenly more concerned. No, Amanda said with a grim look. I'm saying you'll lose your career. No one will hire you. I paused to consider, then said, Amanda, I may just be a simple guy from Iowa, but when Eloise accepted my proposal, she made a commitment. She didn't keep hers, so you can't expect me to keep mine. Amanda shook her head. Finally, she said, come on, you stubborn corn farmer, get dressed. I'm taking you to meet my family. It's not every day they get to meet a real, live Presbyterian. Actually, my family's Lutheran. Same thing, she said with a wink. At 5 p.m, we took a yellow taxi to Amanda's family home on Beverly Road. Car services were off limits because Uncle Morty was a retired taxi driver. Morty now lived on his welfare with his 2 sisters, Hester and Sophie, in the house they had inherited from their parents. Morty had been married, but his wife ran off with a shoe salesman 30 years ago, a subject that was never discussed. Aunt Sophie's husband died in Vietnam, and Hester never married. Amanda's father, Leonard, the youngest of the siblings, was the only one with children. Leonard and his wife, Rebecca, had 2 daughters, Amanda and Sonia, and now 3 grandchildren, thanks to Sonia and her husband, Jerry. The house was located in a section of Flatbush, Brooklyn, known to realtors as Ditmas, or Ditmas Park. When we arrived at the large 2-story house on a spacious lot, bigger than what you usually find in the city, I didn't see anything resembling a park. Unlike Amanda's apartment, which was across from a small, quiet park, her aunts and uncle lived on a bustling avenue. The house, built in the Queen style, wasn't a mansion, but was larger than the typical New York City home. We were greeted at the door by Aunt Hester, a short, sturdy woman with steel gray hair. She hugged Amanda first, calling her Mandy, before turning to me, scrutinizing me for what felt like a long time, and finally saying, "Not bad at all. Handsome young man." "Oh, I think he's very handsome," added Aunt Sophie, emerging from deeper within the house. Sophie was tall and dark-haired, a sharp contrast to her sister. After Sophie hugged Amanda, the aunts led us into the kitchen, where dinner was being prepared. A large cake sat on the table, and the kitchen was filled with the aroma of roasting meats and the sweet scent of vanilla. "Will you peel the potatoes, Mandy?" Sophie asked, handing Amanda a potato peeler and a colander of freshly washed potatoes. "I'll take your man to help set the table," Hester said, grabbing my hand and guiding me through the swinging door into the wood-paneled dining room. The dining room was a long, wide rectangle with a burgundy carpet covering the parquet floor. Dark oak panels stretched halfway up the walls, above which wallpaper adorned with roses drew the eye upward. The ceiling was an intricate design of mahogany and oak, and a modest chandelier hung from a carved mahogany medallion. Hester led me to the china cabinets along the far wall, which were filled with various sets of porcelain. She pointed to a cabinet and said, "We'll use these plates today." Smiling at me, she added, "It's not easy being Jewish, with all these different sets of dishes." I vaguely understood that there were separate sets for meat and dairy. She handed me a stack of plates, and we began setting the massive table, which had clawed legs and was covered with a pristine white linen tablecloth. As we worked, I couldn't help but inspect the bottoms of the plates and the labels on the linens. The porcelain was from England, and the linens were from Ireland. The real deal, I thought, just like the people who lived here. While Hester set the table, she engaged me in casual conversation, asking questions that seemed harmless, but were probably intended to get to know me better. Before long, she knew almost everything about me, except, of course, the details of my failed engagement. When we placed the last silver fork on the table, she remarked casually, "It doesn't hurt much, just a tiny piece." Most kids don't even cry. I didn't understand what she meant, but before I could ask, we heard commotion in the hallway. A strong female voice called out, "I'm here, and I brought the birthday boy." It was Rebecca, also known as Judge Levin of the U South District Court. Amanda's mother, her father, Leonard, was a professor of economics at New York University. I had been invited to Leonard's birthday party. Hester nudged me into the kitchen while she went to greet her brother and sister-in-law. Inside the kitchen, Amanda was peeling potatoes and putting them into a pot on the stove. She glanced over at me and said, "We need to wait here while my aunts break the news that you're here as their guest." "Am I going to cause you any problems?" I asked, suddenly feeling protective. "No, but it might be a bit of a shock. I've never brought a man home before. Mom could be a little critical, so be ready." The situation was awkward and only grew more uncomfortable when we were called into the living room to meet Amanda's parents. The living room was spacious and cozy, furnished in a style reminiscent of the early 20th century. It had the potential to feel peaceful, but I could sense tension building. As we entered, Amanda pulled a small box from the light jacket she had hung in the hallway earlier. It was clearly wrapped as a birthday present. There was an awkward silence when we walked in. Amanda's father, Leonard, broke the tension with a smile and a joke. "Is this young man my birthday present, Mandy?" he asked. "No, Dad," Amanda replied softly. "I brought you this." She handed him the gift, still gripping my hand tightly, which I now realized she had been doing for some time. "Well," her father said, "I was hoping for a son-in-law, but I'm sure I'll like this too." He smiled at his daughter as he unwrapped the gift, revealing a well-worn baseball. His smile widened, though the others seemed confused. Leonard explained, "This is a game ball signed by the Mets." He stood up to hug Amanda, whispering in her ear, "Still, I prefer a son-in-law." Amanda whispered something back, but I couldn't hear. Her father chuckled, but when I glanced at her mother, she was glaring at me. At that moment, Sonia arrived with her husband and 3 children, who quickly stole the spotlight as they rushed into the living room. "Oh, good, you made it," Sonia said, giving me a brief hug before introducing me to her husband Jerry, a tall, skinny guy who looked like he could be knocked over by a strong breeze. This is Amanda's new love, Sonia added, grinning. At least she got the gender right this time. Jerry shook my hand, adding, don't mind Sonia. She just loves teasing her older sister. Soon the conversation shifted to the kids' latest antics and the gifts they'd brought for their grandfather. It was a relief to be out of the spotlight, though I could still feel Amanda's mother watching me. Dinner was simple but delicious, and the conversations around the table were filled with the quiet joy that comes from family being together. Occasionally I was asked a question, but if Amanda could answer for me, she did so immediately. For more personal questions, I answered simply or deflected. Yes, my parents were dead. Yes, the farm was in Iowa. Yes, I only had one sister. I avoided talking about her because I didn't know how to explain that part of my life. However, during coffee and birthday cake, things took a turn. Judge Levin, Amanda's mother, had been watching me closely, and when the children were occupied with their cake, she pounced. Walter, are you related to the Stillman who's supposed to marry Eloise Schaffer tomorrow? I hesitated, but spoke before Amanda could jump in with the sharp response I anticipated. Yes and no, I said. I was supposed to marry Eloise, but it's over. And before you ask, your daughter had nothing to do with it. Is that true? Amanda's mother asked, turning to her daughter. Yes, Amanda answered. Really? Amanda's mother pressed. Yes, it's true, if that's what you're concerned about, Amanda replied, her hostility evident. Honestly, I didn't want to bring Walter here, but he was invited, and he was kind enough to come. I could tell her mother wanted to say more, but Leonard interrupted. Silencing his wife, Rebecca, enough, he said. Clearly, the young man found out about Mr. Kaufman. I've been observing Walter all evening, and he doesn't seem like the type to tolerate that. His words seemed to hit like a splash of cold water, leaving the judge speechless. As he glanced around the table, it was clear that while Amanda's parents understood the situation, the rest of the family did not. Amanda spoke up. I've admired Walter from a distance for some time. When I found him that night, hurt and alone, I took the chance to get to know him. He was wronged by an awful woman. Yes, Mom, I love him. He's too good not to love. With that, Amanda walked around the table and hugged me from behind. Good job. My niece, Uncle Morty, chimed in, bringing the conversation about Amanda and me to a close. I don't remember much after that, except that there was a general sense of contentment at the table. As we left in the yellow taxi, I turned to Amanda. Are you serious? I asked. What? She replied, trying to avoid the question. When you said you loved me, were you serious? The taxi seemed to grow quiet. Amanda slowly raised her head and said, Yes, I love you. When I first saw you months ago, I wanted you. But now it's more than just attraction. I love you, Walter Stillman. 30 minutes later, I was arrested. Eloise had apparently stayed in our apartment all Friday evening, waiting for me to come back. Where did she think I could have gone? But when I hadn't returned by the next morning, she grew desperate. With the wedding set for Monday, she panicked, fearing I wouldn't show. In her distress, she called the one person she thought had more to lose than she did, Rodrigo Ruiz, or as I now knew him, Rodney Kaufman. He immediately launched a police search. It took them a day to interview all the bartenders on Court Street, eventually learning I had left the Shadow Lady Bar with a short brunette. Since Amanda and I had taken a taxi 12 blocks to her Cobble Hill apartment, the police started questioning all the cab drivers in the area that night. By late Sunday, they tracked down the taxi that had dropped us at the corner of Clinton and Congress. From there, they identified the basement apartment belonging to Amanda Moskowitz, the woman who fit the description of my companion. When the police visited Amanda's apartment on Friday night, they found it dark and empty, undeterred. They posted a couple of patrol cars to wait for our return. That eager group of officers was waiting when Amanda and I finally got back. Despite Amanda's protests, they quickly took me away. At midnight, I found myself in a small, grim room, badly in need of cleaning and a fresh coat of paint. They sat me down at a table and cuffed me. No one told me what I'd been accused of. After a few minutes, the door opened and in walked Eloise, looking as beautiful as ever. So, this is your doing? I asked, my voice filled with anger and disappointment. She looked a bit dazed, standing across the table. There were 2 chairs on her side, but she didn't sit. Walter, please understand, when you didn't come home, I was worried something had happened to you. So, you had me arrested? For what? You're not under arrest. said a tall, very handsome man who entered quietly behind her. He moved toward Eloise, and I instantly recognized him. Rodney Kaufman, or Rodrigo Ruiz. He was more than 20 years older than me, and while he did his best to hide it, the signs of aging were there. "Rodrigo Ruiz," I said, my voice dripping with venom. "Please call me Rod," he replied smoothly. "I hope we can be friends. For you, it's still Mr. Stillman," I responded coldly. "And I have no desire to be friends." Rod sighed. "That's unfortunate, because I think you could benefit from my friendship right now." I lifted my handcuffed wrists slightly, causing the chains to rattle. "You can keep me here, but not for long," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Rod smiled faintly. "I only hope it's long enough for you to hear what Eloise has to say." Eloise, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "Walter, you've misunderstood. Rod and I are just friends now. Whatever we had is over. If you'd stayed on Friday night, I would have told you everything. We have a saying in Iowa. I may have been born at night, but it wasn't last night. I found you in his hotel room." Eloise started, but Rod interrupted her smoothly. "Regardless, the two of you are set to be married today, and it's in everyone's best interest to proceed with it." "Sorry, but I refuse to marry this traitor," I said. Eloise let out a small cry, but Rod just smiled and said, language, let's keep things civil. Would you rather I call her a promiscuous? Because that's what she is." I could tell my words stung him, though he kept smiling. Eloise turned away, tears streaming down her face. Rod remained calm. "Such an attitude will only lead to trouble. You're being foolish. Eloise is a wonderful woman who would make an excellent wife. If you don't go through with the wedding, there will be a major scandal. Reporters are expected. This is a high-profile event. Eloise's reputation will be destroyed. And mine as well, because the truth will get out. People love gossip, and this would be perfect for them. You have a promising career ahead of you at a prestigious firm. But if you don't marry Eloise today, that career will vanish. No one will hire you after this," he warned. I smiled back. I wouldn't marry her for a senior partner position, let alone stay on as a junior lawyer in bankruptcy. Rod sighed again. "I told you he wouldn't listen," Eloise muttered through her tears. Rod continued in a smooth, measured tone. "Okay, Mr. Stillman, how much will it take to make Eloise Mrs. Stillman?" "You don't have enough money," I replied. Rod didn't blink. "It doesn't have to be forever. A year or two, then a quiet divorce? And what will people say when we divorce?" I asked. He stayed calm, clearly a seasoned negotiator. "The situation at the time of the divorce will be my problem. Name your price for marrying her for 2 years. How long has she been pregnant?" I asked, finally piecing it all together. Eloise turned toward me, her voice cold and bitter. "The child could be yours." "Maybe," I said, "but I'll wait for the DNA test." Rodney remained unfazed. "How much?" "No amount in the world," I said, nearly spitting the words at him. Our conversation was interrupted by a short, bald man in his 60s, followed by 2 officers. "Hello, Rod. Miss Schaffer. You must be Walter Stillman," he said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "I'm your lawyer, Cy Leibowitz. Here's a copy of the writ of habeas corpus I just filed," he added, handing a paper to Rod. "You're a bit late, Cy," Rod said, his tone slightly irritated. "Things were moving slowly," Cy replied calmly. Rod tried to regain control, threatening to seek a forced commitment, but Cy dismissed the threat, pointing out the warrant was invalid since it wasn't filed by my sister, my only living relative. Realizing he had lost, Rod backed off with a shrug. Cy then took me out, where Amanda was waiting. Her mother, the judge, had woken Cy and arranged my release. That was the last time I saw Eloise. The child was never born, likely because Eloise chose to avoid a scandal that would hurt Rod. As for his threat to ruin my career, I'm sure he tried. But fate intervened. I was on my honeymoon from September 2nd to the 14th, 2008. By the time I returned on September 15th, Lehman Brothers had collapsed, turning the financial world upside down. Eric Erickson became the most important partner at the firm, and I became the go-to lawyer. Amanda and I worked 90-hour weeks for 6 months before we married, just in time, as her pregnancy was already showing. Our first child was a girl, followed by 3 more. 4 daughters turned out to be enough for us. Amanda became a judge, like her mother. And I started my own firm. When people ask the secret to my successful career and marriage, I tell them it all started with a day as a racetrack judge, a broken heart, and a girl named Sugar.